Hello and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. Today I'm talking about the new moon solar eclipse in the beautiful, lovely, golden, heartfelt sign of Leo. Now, eclipses happen when a new moon or a full moon falls very close to what's known as the lunar nodes. And what's interesting is that a few days ago, the nodes changed signs. So the south node changed into Leo and the north node changed into Aquarius. Now I'm going to show you the chart for the eclipse here. So you can see here, look on the right side here in the seventh house of this chart. It's set this is the chart for the eclipse and it's set for London. If you set the chart for somewhere else, it most likely be in a different house, so you can kind of dismiss the houses, the segments, but you can see it there in the seventh house. On the right hand side of the chart there, you can see the little sigils for the sun and the moon. You can see the little squiggle, that is the south node in Leo, 29 degrees of Leo, right at the very end of Leo, but the nodes always move backwards. You can see if you look straight down from that south node, you'll see the south node is in 29 degrees of Aquarius. They always fall in opposition. So there's always going to be a nodal axis, as we call it, between two opposing signs. So they move backwards, so they've just gone into the last degree of Aquarius and in Leo. If you don't know what the nodes are, they're not planets or bodies, they're not anything you can see in a telescope. They are points. They are basically the point at which the lunar cycle, the moon cycle, crosses the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun as it appears to move around the earth. We know in reality that we move around the sun, but as we observe the sun's path as it goes around our planet, our Earth, we mark that as the ecliptic. So anyway, so what does it mean? What other nodes mean? Well, I'm sure many of you know all this, but I always think it's nice to set the context. I like to speak about astrology in a way that hopefully beginners can understand, but also bring in hopefully some insights and ideas that might be helpful or illuminating for people who are well versed in astrology, who can read charts. If you can't read the chart, don't worry, it doesn't matter. You don't need to be able to read a chart to enjoy this conversation, enjoy this podcast. But the North Node, as I said, at the moment has just gone into the sign of Aquarius. Generally speaking, the North Node has something to say about our soul's purpose for this lifetime. They're spiritual points. They're the key to our growth, our soul's growth spiritually, and more generally, by expressing the positive, by learning and exploring and expressing the positive qualities of the sign that the North Node happens to be in. Now, this goes for your birth chart, so you can find a birth chart at perhaps at alave.com or astro.com. You can see what your nodes are. So this is natally, I'm talking about more than anything, but when we have the transiting nodes, which is what we're looking at this chart, those energies coming, we do collectively embrace the energies. So we are embracing the energies collectively now when we come to this eclipse of the North Node in Aquarius and the South Node in Leo. And I'll talk about some of the specific things. So basically, if we are looking at the North Node, as I've said, it's about the qualities. It's about expressing and bringing in the at best qualities. Every sign of the zodiac has a good side, a bad side. It's a spectrum. There's the shadow of it. There's the at best, the best way to express those zodiacal energies. So we have work to do at the North Node. So where our North Node is in our chart, which sign it's in will tell us a little bit about what that work is. When it's in Aquarius, collectively, as a collective human race, then we can say we need to learn some lessons and to bring in some of the positive qualities of the sign of Aquarius. And it might be difficult sometimes, we might find it difficult personally and collectively to integrate and embrace and express those qualities. It's something that we need to bring in for our purpose as a human race, but also for our purpose collectively. So I'm talking on two levels here. The nodes are also seen as a dragon, right? As a dragon. So the North Node is the mouth of the dragon. It's what you bring in and what you ingest. And the South Node, which I'll talk about now, is the tail of the dragon. So it's what is purged, what is eliminated at the tail end of the dragon, if you will. So it's about what we already bring with us. It's what we already contain. It's already our qualities, whether that's the positive at best or the more negative, the shadow qualities of the sign of the South Node. We've kind of been there, we've done that, we understand it naturally. It comes natural to us, perhaps from past lives, or perhaps more generally speaking in this current life. So we can step into the South Node stuff anytime we like, but we need to move out of our comfort zone and move towards the North Node as well. If we become too over reliant on the stuff of the South Node, then we don't learn, we don't grow, we can miss out on opportunities. So yes, getting to know the two signs on the axis of the lunar nodes. All the planets have nodes actually, but lunar nodes is generally what most astrologers use. Getting to know the two planets in opposition, whether it's the nodes in your own chart or whether it's the nodes transiting, which is what we're looking at now. So the South Node in Leo. You can see the South Node, as I've already said, next to the Sun and the Moon. So it is what's known as a South Node solar eclipse. It's a new moon. It's a very strong new moon. It's a South Node solar eclipse. So during this eclipse, we can contemplate perhaps the ideas that are Leo. Perhaps we can look at some of the shadow ideas for Leo, some of the shadow qualities of Leo, and we can reflect upon them. Remember, full moons are reflective, sorry, not full moons, new moons are the dark of the moon, especially when it's a total solar eclipse like this one, because we don't see the sun either in certain parts of the world, but we can reflect upon the shadow of Leo. Every sign, if I say some things about Leo and you're a Leo, don't get offended. I'm just going to be focusing on some of the shadow qualities of Leo that we might want to reflect upon. Are these qualities that we embody? I mean, particularly if this eclipse touches your chart, if you have anything between sort of 20 and 29, or maybe even 18, or 18 of Leo, or the first couple of degrees of Virgo in your chart, then you will be touched by this eclipse. You'll be touched by this eclipse. The closer you have anything to 20 degrees and 29 degrees, it brings in the South Node as well. So some of the perhaps shadow aspects or qualities of Leo is selfish self-centeredness. Where are we experiencing that in ourselves, in our lives? Where are we seeing that out in the collective? Drama. There's certainly been a lot of drama around swirling around. I have not been at the center of any drama, but certainly I've been aware of lots of drama going on in the world in which I inhabit at the moment. Seeking validation and putting on an act as well, not being your authentic self. Aquarius, we'll talk about in a minute, wants you to be original and different and unique and to be yourself, even if it is uncomfortable for other people. It's about perhaps another shadow of Leo is taking credit for the team rather than understanding that nobody succeeds, nobody gets into the spotlight without a team behind them, nobody does it alone. So we must honor our part as a team, as our part in a group or as part of a community. Again, moving into the positive traits that we might want to think about for Aquarius with this North Node. Embracing our unique, authentic self. So part of the group, but how do we show up as ourselves authentically and unique while still being in the group? It's also about letting go, I think, of going back into Leo. It's about letting go of the idea of unearned privilege and entitlement. And around this eclipse, we might see this becoming a major theme in the world, in the collective more generally. You can see this Mercury here. You can see how much strong Leo is in this chart. We've got Mercury conjunct Jupiter here. So that is the communication, the mindset of entitlement, of privilege. But it's also about perhaps how we might be able to, through how we communicate, Mercury, spread joy and hope and optimism. So there's always within each combination of planets and each planet in each sign, there are opportunities for growth, opportunities for very positive manifestations. So while Leo says, I'm special, Aquarius says, well, we're all special, aren't we? Aquarius is about perhaps at the moment, there's about 18 months, we've got about 18 months or so of this North Node in Aquarius. Perhaps it's about developing our friendships, our alliances, embracing and working on our social connections, on collaboration, on a more equal footing. There's a spiritual aspect, as I've already said, to the node. So it's about perhaps how we mature and evolve spiritually as leaders, but leading by example, rather than being the bossy, controlling leader. And nobody loves the bossy boots, do they? There's a lot of talk about narcissism as well. Everyone seems to be very prone to calling other people out for so-called narcissistic traits, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. That's another theme that might come up. Sort of, how do we deal with narcissistic traits in ourselves, in our partners, in the world, the people we work with, more generally speaking. And also, I think the North Node in Aquarius has something to say about integrity as well. And Leo also has something about integrity as well. They both have something to say about integrity, shining a light on yourself. If you shine a light on yourself, you let light run through you. What do you see? What is illuminated, Leo? And how does that reflect who you are? It's about not putting on a show, not putting on a performance, letting that drop and seeing who you are when you just stand in the light. It's vulnerable, of course. But of course, if you shine a light in the dark, so you can shift the dark. I just talked about the idea of narcissism, not to say in any way, shape, or form that Leos or people are Leos or Leos associated with narcissism. It's just something that seems to come up in the collective a lot recently. If we shine a light in the dark, it's like the idea of the mythical idea is if you put a vampire in the sunlight, the vampire turns to dust. So if we put the qualities that we might feel proud about, we might feel proud that we're the controlling, bossy leader because people listen to us and they do as we tell them. If we really put that into the light and let those feelings, let that stuff, as we call it, turn to dust, we might find an insecurity to work on. We might find issues around perhaps we don't feel respected, so we have to be controlling, we have to be bossy. Or we have to, perhaps we might even be brave enough to acknowledge that we enjoy having control over other people, whether that's people in your life, your partner, whether that's your colleagues, people that work for you, or whatever, or family dynamics, of course. So there's a lot to work on. And then collectively, I think the North Node in Aquarius calls for changes in society that benefit the common people, not just the privileged few. And of course, that is some of the themes of Pluto in Aquarius as well, right? So let's focus now on particularly on this solar eclipse itself. So it's interesting, all solar eclipses belong to what's known as a Saros cycle. And this is from Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark, a very brilliant predictive astrology book by a brilliant astrologer called Bernadette Brady. And in her book, she lists the various Saros cycles, which every solar eclipse belongs. So this is Saros cycle SS10 South, or you might have seen it referred to as Saros cycle 126. It's the same thing. They're very long cycles that go on for many, 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 many centuries, and each one has its own theme. And this is quite an interesting one. It highlights the need, it highlights what we need to release, I think. It's about breaking out of negative or seemingly hopeless situations. So there's hope involved here, hope of something better, of letting go of our worries and being able to move into a more positive place, clear up those worries, and also take the opportunity. Take opportunities that come into your life roundabout. Now, a solar eclipse has quite a long shelf life. When you think of a new moon, it lasts for a day and then it might have resonance the day before, a couple of days after, etc., etc. But there's a longer shelf life with a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, which is an eclipse full moon. But so you've got time, but opportunities may come up. And if they come up, if they feel right in the gut, if they feel right in your gut, if they ignite a fire in your belly, you can see here, you've got Mars at 0 degrees of Cancer, which is about the belly, that fire. Then, you know, take up those opportunities, because those opportunities might not last forever. And just riffing really on the themes of the Saros cycle, I'd say, because it's in Leo, I'd say, take heart. We can take heart. We can have courage to take up those opportunities. And I think Jupiter here in Leo also really helps us to have courage to speak up as well. Mercury there is conjunct Jupiter in this chart as well. If we're looking at these eclipses or any eclipses, we might look back 19 years, because there's a 19-year cycle as well where there's an eclipse that falls pretty much in the same degree. So in February 2009, there was a solar eclipse in 20 degrees of Leo. So if we look back to 2009, around that time, we might see some, you know, look back at our diaries, look back at what we were doing, where we were, who we were with, etc. We might find some resonance into what's happening now, or we might see the foundations that were built there. Because a new moon is a seeding time. It's not a time for huge action. It's not a time for getting everything done all at once and then, you know, moving on. It's a time for seeding. It's a time for the slow transformational change. So we can look back and see if there's a connection, of course. So the South Node Leo themes apply that we've already talked about letting go of the shadow side of Leo and embracing the positive qualities, that generosity, that courage I've talked about, that magnanimity, that being hospitable for the sake of it, being warm and welcoming and inviting, friendly. That's the Aquarius coming in, friendly, cooperative. So as I've already said, we're invited to be ourselves. Because it's a new moon, we might want to reflect on who is the authentic me, who is the me who performs. I always laugh when I used to do corporate roles, and times when I was job hunting, and I'd be sent job descriptions, and the agents would say, "Oh, we have a certain role." Well, I didn't say anything, but privately, secretly, I'd be laughing and going, "I'm not an actor. I don't want to play a role. I want to kind of be myself." And then when you're in a job, you're assessed on your performance. So maybe having to think about, what role do you play? What role do you play at work, in your family, in your relationships, in your friendships, and so on and so forth? How can you be more your authentic self? People might not like it. I'm not saying be your authentic self in the way some people say, well, that's just the way I, you're going to have to put up, I've suddenly found my mean side. I've suddenly found my crazy side, and I'm going to do it because I want to be myself. No, it's about doing it with compassion, about doing it in an Aquarian, in the Aquarian ways, which is to do it collaboratively. You know, we might even find we might even find new friends, new people. You know, we might find our tribe, you know, during this time, during this 18 months. That's something to sort of think about. Reflection on who we are in our heart. Leo is, of course, the heart. Leo also represents the heart in our body. It's also represented by the sun. And in a meditation I did very recently, actually just a few days ago, I was taken on this journey in this meditation where the sun, the heart in our body, is almost like has that connection to the sun in the sky, you know, the sun in the center of our solar system that gives us life, just as the heart in our body gives us life. And that's that idea of that beautiful sort of esoteric, energetic Leo, that life comes from our heart, and it's a beautiful, golden, bright, light, creative energy. So we mustn't forget that. We mustn't forget that, as I've already said. Put it in the light, put things in the light. Imagine yourself in the light. Now, one thing that is quite interesting in this chart for the new moon. I keep going to say full moon, but it's new moon, new moon, new moon, new moon. There you go. We have Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer is doing three interesting things. So we must look at Mars in this chart because it's in the sign of Cancer, which is the sign of its fall, where it's more of a challenge to express itself in its purest form. So Mars in Cancer is associated with being over defensive, over protective, repressed anger, passive aggression. It's also at 0 degrees of Cancer. So all the 0 degrees of all the cardinal signs, which is Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra, it's known that 0 degree is known as the Aries point. It's collectively it's known as the Aries point, you know, but it's kind of the degree, the cardinal first degrees of the cardinal signs. It's where things become more public. So if you might sense more people around you publicly being passive aggressive, for example, or you might have those feelings yourself. So that's something to bear in mind. It sort of brings it brings it into the spotlight. And I've already talked about the fire in your belly as well. But what Mars in Cancer can help you with, you know, because belly is Cancer, right? A sign of Cancer. So what you might also be able to sort of help is kind of try and think about what your gut reactions are to things. I've already talked actually about the sun and the sun in our chest, that the sun is a brain in itself as well. We have the brain in our head, we have the brain in our heart, which does have neurons, and also the brain in our gut. So I always talk about balancing those three brains. You know, you've got the problem-solving brain here, the thinking brain, so to speak. You've got the heart, which is the emotional brain, the emotional memory, and then you've got the gut instinct that really can help to protect you. So I think this is a good time for Mars in Cancer to help us to develop our gut instincts as well. Then we can pass it through our emotional heart brain and a heart brain in our, literally in our heart, and then we can problem solve with our head brain as well. And one thing I think that might be able to help us at this time, and I've been doing this every day for the last few days, and I'm going to continue doing it pretty much as for as long as I think I need to. But you know, with everything in Leo, it's a good way to sort of work with that energy. And with this Mars in Cancer, is to practice the lion's breath. Very relevant, isn't it, for Leo? It's a yogic breath. I'm not going to demonstrate it because it looks a bit funny. And if you go on YouTube or just go on the internet and look lion's breath, how to do it, then you'll see it. Basically, it's a yogic practice where you take a very deep breath in, and then when you exhale, you open your eyes wide, you open your mouth wide, and you put out your tongue as far as it will go, and you make a kind of noise, you know, sort of thing. That's as much it's much more dramatic than that. It's very Leo. So I'm not going to I'm only a little dot here anyway on the screen, so I'm not going to demonstrate it here, but please try it. It's great for releasing tension where we all hold tension, don't we, very often in our jaw and in our face, but also release that emotional tension and pent up anger. So I would recommend that. The other final thing I'm going to say about Mars in Cancer is that it goes out of bounds the day before the the lunar solar eclipse, the new moon solar eclipse. Mars goes out of bounds. Well, what does that mean? Well, basically, basically, the planets, including the sun, we see them moving around our planet, and we track them, and that's what our astrology is based on. But they're not just moving like this, if you can see like that. They're also moving like that up and down, and that up and down, as well as they're going round and round, is what's called declination. And the sun has a declination of let me just get this right, 23 degrees and 27 minutes. That's the north and south height limit of the declination. And when another planet goes beyond that boundary, crosses that boundary, it goes either higher or lower than that 23 degrees or so declination of the sun, it's called out of bounds. Basically, it means that it's wild energy associated with whatever that planet is all about. You can see here that you have Mars in Cancer. I've already talked a lot about that, and it's in a square with Venus in Libra. Now, Venus in Libra wants balance, it wants peace, it wants quiet, it wants to be valued. It doesn't mean quiet. It doesn't want quiet. If you know many Libras, they don't like they like to talk, but it wants peace and balance, right? So there's maybe some tension there in relationships. So that's something to bear in mind. That passive aggressive defensiveness, protectiveness can perhaps represent difficulty in connecting in the way that the Venus in Libra wants to connect. You know, it's kind of it wants niceness, doesn't it? It wants niceness, it wants glamour. But also Venus in Libra is often up for a good argument, up for a good debate. And that's probably where the some of the passive aggressive protectiveness, defensiveness, you know, that kind of I'm right kind of thing can come in. So yeah, try not to get into too many problems in relationships if you can. These things are avoidable. Other people might project these difficult emotions or different responses onto you, but you don't have to engage, or you can just go off and do your lion's breath for a little bit and take a breather until you're ready to come back, because peace wants to reign, basically, doesn't it, with Venus in Libra. And then finally, we also have Pluto goes out of bounds actually on the day of this eclipse, and it's going to be out of bounds for the rest of the year, really, well, until early December when it comes back. The other thing is about out of bounds planets is that boundaries are pushed, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because it pushes the boundaries of the sun. We've already talked about the sun, and the sun is all about Leo. You know, Leo is ruled by the sun, so the sun is very important at the moment with all this Leo energy, but also on this solar eclipse. So the boundaries of the sun, the life force, the energy, those are being pushed. Rules are being broken by Mars out of bounds, and then by Pluto out of bounds. So what does that tell us? Well, it's Pluto in Aquarius, power to the people, right? That's one of the themes of, that energy, power to the people. So that is potentially revolutionary energy, isn't it? Potentially the stronger push for social reform. It's connected to the eclipse. You can see, if you look carefully, there's a black line there between Pluto and the solar eclipse, the 20 degrees of Leo. Quindachile it's an aspect that's 165 degrees. It's hard to spot in a chart in the way that squares and conjunctions and oppositions are spotted, but it's really important. I learned about quindachiles from the late astrologer Noel Teal, actually. He was very big on quindachiles. Anyway, if you have chart software, or you can go on astro.com and get a free chart, you can put quindachiles in there. You can see it's going to be a quindicile between this solar eclipse and Pluto in Aquarius. So go back to all those Leo Aquarius themes that we've been talking about for the nodes and think about that. It's about obsession. So perhaps where we might need to let go of collectively, Pluto, don't forget, is a collective planet. Collectively let go of our obsession with power for personal gain, right? Power for personal gain. And really try and do reforms that work for the common people. Aquarius is about the common people. It's about the groups and the tribes and the teams. It's not about the elite at the top of the social structure. So here are some ideas just to think about. Don't forget, this eclipse still falls under the so-called Barbault's basket, this cradle, this amazing, incredible opportunity for what Barbault called a relaunch, a splendid relaunch of civilization, which is you have the connections between Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune in the early degrees. It's really quite a cool and very rare combination. And we see here as well that Jupiter is part of that as well. It was exact in July. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter were all at 4 degrees of their respective signs. And it's been called the basket. It's also been called the cradle. Okay, the cradle. And that, I think, fits it better, calling it a cradle. A cradle is about the beginning of a new life, a beginning of a new way of living, a beginning of a new civilization. That is the opportunity that Andre Barbault, when he talked about this configuration, he included Saturn in it as well. Actually, it was for the Saturn. He talked about it in terms of when Saturn and Neptune were at 0 degrees of Aries together, connected with Uranus and Pluto. But it's been with us for months and maybe even a year. We've got another year or so of it. I know Saturn has moved on and Jupiter will move on as well. But something to bear in mind. Something to bear in mind. Remember the hope and the optimism and the joy that is to be found, the opportunities that are to be found. We just need to let go of a few things that aren't working for us, whether that's collectively or whether that is individually and personally. We can all work, even if we work on our so-called stuff individually, it still has probably more than we realize. I like to believe it has quite a profound, it can have quite a profound effect on the collective. And if enough people do it, then wow, this splendid relaunch of civilization that Barbault predicted, it's kind of there for the taking. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all. Thank you. And I just want to tell you one more thing, talking about Jupiter. Jupiter meets the outers. I'm doing a talk on mundane astrology about when Jupiter meets Uranus, Jupiter meets Neptune, Jupiter meets Pluto. Fantastic examples from going back into the far distant past into very, very current affairs. It's a mundane astrology talk. So if you're interested in the astrology of the world and its leaders, etc., and the planetary cycles, don't hesitate to book it. 22nd of August, academy of astrology.co.uk. It is a small payment, but it's going to be worth it. Fabulous. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I'm going to say goodbye now. There you go. Thanks so much. Lots of love as always. Cheerio. Bye-bye.